So we've been doing this type of training for a few years now. It started about 4 years ago. Some of the defense contractors in town were a little bit concerned about active shooter events and asked us to come out and do a training for them. And then this has sort of evolved. So we've looked at more of an all hazards sort of approach, not just the active shooter incident, but pretty much anything and everything that you could think of that can go wrong. And most recently we've adopted the standard response protocol. I'm going to hand that out in a little bit. But just to let you know, we've worked, both of us, for the Burlington Police Department for a couple of decades. Sergeant McDonough's been on longer than me. Even though he looks so young, I know it's impossible to believe. Impossible, right?
Yeah, thank you.
But I've actually worked for the town of Burlington since I was a 14-year-old kid. So been around for a little bit. Seen the schools. I worked in the school department for many years before I got on the police department. So the active shooter thing, we just want to talk about this. We don't want you to worry too much about it, but it's something that people are concerned about. Fortunately, these events are very rare. But there are a number of training systems out there, and as the chief said, we've been very fortunate. We go to a lot of training, and we've done all sorts of training all around the country. And we've seen pretty much all of these different things. And we've settled on one that we think is the best, the easiest for the business community. We like run, hide, fight. But you'll hear these other things. Maybe you have children in school systems in some of the cities and towns around here. Maybe you've heard of this one, alert, lockdown, inform, counter, evacuate, ALICE. That's somewhat controversial in some places. Avoid, deny, defend, escape, heart attack, avoid. Look at all these things. Every time we find a new one, we email each other, hey, look, another one. All these things basically boil down to 3 different actions that you can take. And it's not just the active shooter, it's the active threat, any kind of violence. So what we base everything that we do on is research. We're not just coming out and saying, hey, we think this is the best thing. We actually do research. We read all the reports. We read all the after-action reports. When these incidents happen, as they're happening, we start texting each other, hey, there's one going on now, what we see in the news, what we see on social media, and we're following all of these things very closely. There's a study the FBI did, active shooter events. They've done another study and added on to this more recently. So we had 160 events between 2000 and 2013. They've just updated this with 2 more years worth of data, and between 2000 and 2015, we've had 200 incidents that they've studied in this country on this. Generally, business locations are the #1 target. Sorry. More frequently attacked, followed by schools, and then government venues is about 10%, all of them. Median number of people, the average number of people killed in an active shooter event is 2, and then the average number wounded is another 2. And what we're doing is we're hoping that we can, change these odds a little bit. Most commonly used weapons, handguns. High-capacity handguns. They're very easy, portable, fire a lot of rounds, do a lot of damage, followed by rifles and then by shotguns. We had one time somebody asked, what's the difference between a rifle and a shotgun? If you don't know, a rifle fires a bullet, a single bullet, at a very high velocity. A shotgun is a big, thick round that can fire anything from tiny little pellets, like birdshot, all the way up to a single slug. So there are different kinds of weapons. So if you were wondering what the difference is, the handgun, the rifle, the shotgun. We also had other weapons used too. More recently, automobiles. We're seeing more things with knives. We've even seen police officers attack with hatchets randomly. So don't just think about firearms. There's a whole host of different threats out there. And if we look, there's sort of a trend. You can see these events happening. There's a graduated symbol map. I like that kind of talk because I'm in crime analysis. Crime analysis is not CSI. It's more like mapping crime and looking at statistics. So you'll see these events around the country. 2002, a little more frequent. You'll see the larger dots are 10 or more people. Smaller dots are 0 to 4 people. That first dot right up there in Massachusetts that you see, that was up the street in Wakefield. Sergeant McDonough actually responded to that incident back in 2000. And you'll see them coming up more frequently as we get further in time. 2007, 2008, more frequent. It's like watching the election at home. What's going on? 2012, right up until we get into 2013.
Just remember how Glenn says it's not it doesn't have to be a rifle or a firearm, because a lot of people look at an active shooter. We really refer to it as a lethal threat, because it could be anything. It could be a knife. It could be like a domestic in the floor under you, and a person's looking for somebody. Now they're up on your floor where you hold your company. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that perceived incident of somebody with a rifle. Okay, it's any threat that can affect your employees. You should either run, hide, or fight. And remember that you may not have all those three options available to you. Okay, so if you don't have one, if you can't run or you can't hide because you're in a big room, then the other options you have to take care of. Okay, but one thing I like to say in this before we show the video is please share this with your loved ones and with any other friends, because my daughter's, my youngest is in college, and she's been to 2 colleges and she's been to 2 lockdowns. Okay, hopefully she'll stay at the college she's at now for a little bit. So far, so good. But she knew what run, hide, fight was, and she called me up and actually said, "Dad, we're going to lockdown. There's supposed to be somebody with a gun." Okay, so do you think that needs to be told to our high school kids, to our college kids, that if they're at the mall, they're at the cinema, right? We have to. You know, you got to let people know that, same as you guys. If it's in your head and you have this, and if something happens, I'm going to do one of these options. Our studies have shown that if that happens, you'll react better, okay, because you've thought about it. So you think about this stuff, you put it in the back of your head, and then if you don't ever use it, good for you. You know, we tell our school teachers the same thing. But be ready for it. You have to be ready to lock your doors, barricade, give us time. All you're doing is giving us time to show up, okay? But please share this with anyone that you need to share this with, because people need to know this, okay? Because it does happen. You know, we had a shooting at the mall, I believe that was last April, a drug deal gone bad, and if the guy wasn't driven to the hospital, he would have died. Okay, we had a homicide last summer in one of our hotels. There's a lot of guns around here, from between Boston and going up north to Lowell and Lawrence. There's a lot of guns around. There's a lot of guns everywhere, okay? There's a lot of weapons around. There's a lot of people that aren't acting stable now for a lot of different reasons, okay? So please, when you go through this, go home and share this with people. Let them know, okay? OSHA recommends that a workplace safety program also includes workplace violence. So that's why we started to do this, okay? So you think about it, as well as having a wet floor and being safe on a wet floor, you also should probably tell your employees what are you going to do if there's a threat. It could be a threat at another company, in your building, it could be out in the parking lot, it could be in your office, but just let people know. Show this run, hide, fight video, which is fantastic. We like it because it's nice and short, it's nice and quick. It doesn't get into a lot of other different procedures. I believe it was a Los Angeles sheriffs have one out on one of the programs. It's a really good video, but people get shot, there's blood. It's like a movie, you know, but it's done in Los Angeles, you know.
Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, it's horrible. And it's so long, this thing just gets it done. But please, take this and use it for what it's worth, okay? It's very, very important in 2016 that everybody thinks about this.
And just looking at the events by year, you can see back in 2000, we didn't have as many, but every year we have a trend that continuously goes up. We think this will probably level off. We think that's what the #1 expert we know on this topic has been telling us for the past year. He studies these things down in Texas. It's something called ALERT. It's funded by the FBI and the federal government, and that's all they do is they study active shooter events. So the video, if you've ever been in a really horrifying situation, if you're sensitive to this kind of thing, this video is not too bad. Like the sergeant said, we're not going to show you the Quentin Tarantino version. That video is pretty crazy. But this video has, you know, some violence, but it's not graphic. So just be prepared for that. And if you want to take a little break and go, hey, you know, I don't like stuff like this, you can go ahead and get a drink or donut or whatever. But if you're good, we'll just show it right now. It's pretty short, but we like it because this is nice and concise, and it pretty much shows you everything you need to know.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
These handouts we gave you, they have all the links to all the resources that we use. So everything that we use, we like to use things from credible organizations like Department of Homeland Security, OSHA, FEMA, MEMA, Massachusetts Emergency Management. But if you want, and you don't want to type those hyperlinks in, just send me an email, and I'll email you the document, and you can just click on it, rather than trying to type those long things in there. These cards are available online. You can give these to your employees, little card-sized handouts. These are all the things right here: evacuate, hideout, take action. They're all the same: run, hide, fight. And it's just the key is knowing which action to take in which situation. There we go. So the first thing people have problems with is that disbelief. When's the last time, anyone ever been to an indoor fireworks show? Right, you do that during like someone's birthday party at work, like, hey, let's light off some fireworks. Right, wouldn't that be a great idea? Generally, no. So people, what happens is, when you study all these incidents and you listen to people in the after-action reviews, a lot of times they'll say, you know what, I thought it was fireworks. A lot of people just don't believe these things are happening to them, so they sort of freeze up. And you know how your brain works, right? When you're under stress, you're gonna have a fight, flight, or freeze reaction. Well, we don't want freeze. That's the worst thing you can do usually. But the fight or flight is pretty good. But a lot of times, people will hear these things and they'll say, gee, I don't know, that's kind of weird. It's just believing that you know, this could be something. And it's okay, you know, to believe the worst, because generally, like I said, you're not going to have fireworks indoors. Now, maybe if you have construction, sometimes they'll use nail guns, and they sound just like gunshots, because that's, in fact, what they're using is it's like a 22 caliber bullet in there, basically. But generally, you don't hear these noises during the workday. So what happens when people are under stress? This is anywhere. This applies not only to the active shooter thing, but this is out and about when you're, you know, in your regular life, driving, any stress situation. What we found is people have these response patterns that they go through. Maybe a child gets severely hurt. What do? You know, you don't want to panic, but generally people have a denial phase, and then they'll deliberate, they'll think about it, and then they'll have a decisive moment. This is the common pattern we see in people that survive stressful incidents. The people who don't survive don't have this part right here. They don't make a decision. What happens under stress? You're going to have tunnel vision. Anyone ever had tunnel vision before, where you don't see things going on around you because of stress? We've had people in the bank presentations that have been robbed before. All you see in something like that is just the gun. They won't see the person's face. These are all normal reactions, very normal. Audio exclusion. People under stress, they won't hear things. Or certain sounds will be magnified. But we've had police officers in shootings too. They'll tell you like, hey, the gun, my gun sounded like a little cap gun. You know, and then the bad guy's gun sounds like a cannon going off, even though it was a smaller gun. Time distortion. Sometimes if you've ever been in a crash, you hit the brakes, and then time sort of slows down, and you feel like it's taking you a half an hour to get to that crash, but you know what's happening. Out-of-body experiences. People will have this. You know, we do death notifications. We tell someone a relative has died or something horrible like that. They'll have sort of an out-of-body experience. And then reduced motor skills. This is why we like run, hide, fight. This is why we like simple things. Because we know, under stress, you're not going to be able to think of, you know, what was that thing again? The alert, the lockdown, the something, and then something. You know, think about it. Under stress, you've got to keep everything simple. And the other thing we recommend too is making sure when you look at your workplace that everything there is also simple. So during a stressful event, you don't have to think too much about what you're going to do. Very important, locking the door. Out of all these incidents that we've studied, only approximately 2, they've penetrated a locked door. A locked door is the safest thing that you have to protect yourself. And in schools too, they've only had 2 incidents where they've had someone get through a locked door. So look at your door locks when you go back to your workplace. Are you able to lock yourself into a room somewhere very easily without pulling out your keys? Or, there we go, well, what's that code that you have to punch in? You know, you don't want any of that stuff. You want to be able to find a safe spot in your workplace where you can lock a door quickly, you know, a little safe room, and you don't have to think about it too much. And you can do it with rough motor skills, not those fine motor skills. Virginia Tech, Sergeant McDonough's read a book on this, looked at it extensively, and this is pretty interesting. This shows what happens when you have classrooms. This is by percentages. It would be easier to read if it was just numbers of people, but if you look at places, rooms where they had no action, where they tried to lock the door, where they locked the door late, and where they locked the door late, and then this one, they had locked the door so that shooter couldn't get in there. And I'll let him speak to this.
This is the perfect case study of what could happen. First of all, there's a national trend, and we take part in it, that we don't want to name any of these people that are involved in these things, because a lot of people do this just to become famous. That goes with the marathon too. We refer to them as white hat and black hat, obviously, at best, okay? Same with this guy. We've met Christina Anderson a couple times, who was a victim of this. She was in room 206, and she was shot 3 times by this guy. He had killed 30 people that day at the college. But this is amazing because it's a perfect case study. The people that didn't do anything to their door, he came in 3 times. The people that were shot and then he left, he came back to the same room again. They had barricaded the 2nd time. Some of those people lived. Another room that they barricaded the entire time, he didn't come in and nobody was killed. Okay, so that's really a perfect case study that shows if you do something to protect yourself, your chances of survival is going to be great. And obviously a lot of it is just tremendously bad luck. The people that, the classroom she was in, they were teaching a class and he just walked in and started shooting. So of course they couldn't do anything. But he came back 3 times in that classroom, okay? It's a perfect example of what you can do. There's also some really horrible photos of that day because there's other classrooms in that college that the kids are just sitting underneath the whiteboard waiting for law enforcement to show up. And law enforcement that day did a tremendous job. They were actually in the building when the shots were going off. They think he heard them coming, and then he killed himself. Okay, so I can't imagine a response being better than what they did. You got to give us a couple minutes to get there. Okay, you got to give us 3 minutes to get there, and that's a tremendously long time. All right, if you think about it. So what you're doing is putting up time barriers to protect yourself. So you've got to think about this before. We did this at the Chamber of Commerce a couple years ago. We offered to go out to all your companies. We did quite a bit off of that. We've been to companies in town 3 or 4 times because I'll tell you, if I was involved in a company, I would say, can you 2 come out once a year and speak with my company for 1 hour? And now I'm showing I have a policy. I'm showing my employees what they should do. We're going over any new people. We're showing run, hide, fight to. You have to prepare for this because what we're doing is we're giving you the authority, the responsibility, the same as we do us. Make your best choice at that time, okay? That's all we are held to for a legal standard. That's all you should be held to. If you start to run and then you see a better place, lock down in that better place, okay? There's no safer place than behind a locked door. We tell the kids at the school, especially the high school, you don't just run because you may run to that threat, if you think about it. The best place is lock yourself in a door and wait for us to show up. Okay? If you just run because you want to run, you may be running to that threat. So you have to think about that in your workplace before this happens. It's also not a bad idea to have a safe room. If you have a bunch of rooms and they can't lock, you might say to all these people, hey, these 3 rooms over on the side here lock. If anything happens, go in there, right? Cubicle people, you know, same thing, right? That's pretty good to talk to each other, but probably not the safest thing, cubicles, right? I mean, if I work in a cubicle, I'd become friends with somebody in one of those offices, you know what I mean? So you can go in there and be friends, lock the door. Adversely, if you have those offices and now someone's being your friend, you're like, oh really, you're my friend now because because you want to go behind my locked door, you know? But that's just the point, that you have to prepare and think about it, and then hopefully never ever have it happen again, okay? But remember, we'll come out and go to your workplace and do the same presentation. We really recommend it. That's a really good workplace safety program. But that's what you want to do with these locks, and this is a perfect case study of it does work if you do something to protect yourself, and then give a couple minutes for law enforcement to get there. Yeah, go ahead.
Hasn't law enforcement tactics changed over the last few years in regards to things prior to 2000, let's say 13 or 2010?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where law enforcement kind of waited to assess the situation before they went in, where now it's completely different in the studies that they've shown, especially guys like this, where as soon as a threat came about to him, he took his own life, whereas before, people were wondering what's going on.
No, that's,
so I mean,
yeah, very much so.
Isn't barricading yourself as opposed to running maybe your best option? And like you said, give the first 2 to 3 minutes. So you know you hear that round go off. Maybe running is your best option, but after a few minutes, law enforcement's going to overwhelm whatever that area is. Yeah. And you running around is causing friction to the law enforcement agents that are going in.
Yeah, no, that's very profound to say that, because just real quick, when Columbine happened, law enforcement showed up. People don't realize, and we actually went to a training there this summer, and it's a creepy, creepy place to go to. I didn't honestly want to go there. I'm glad we did. With just some tremendous speakers, including people that were there at that, plus this and some other places. But when Columbine happened, the school resource officer engaged in gunfire with those 2 kids. They had rifles, he had a pistol. He said, hey, they got rifles. They showed up, police showed up. They waited half an hour for SWAT team to show up. SWAT started going in say 45 minutes. There was bombs, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And while they were waiting, people were killed. They walked all around the school. So I'll never forget a 60 Minutes where they were talking to one of the parents. And one of the parents said, yeah, why didn't the police go in? And the police said, oh, well, you know, they had big guns, and we didn't know how many of them there were. You always get told there's more people than what's actually there. That's part of our thing. And if there's 2, people say there's 5, and whatever. So they said, well, we couldn't go in. He had a big gun. We only had a pistol. And she said, well, my daughter only had a pencil. Okay? So point well taken. Since then, tactics have changed. We're now, well, back then they said, okay, when you get 4 guys, you go in. Then it changed. How many departments? 3. Then it went 3 guys go in. Okay? Now we're down to 1 guy. It's in our policies. We do one-man tactics. We have breach kits in our cars. The guys put on their backs that have like a Halligan, a pry tool, a sledgehammer, bolt cutters, because we know the first person has to get in there. So what you're saying is very profound, because we don't wait for a second or a third guy. Our first officers go in. They're taught to go in, and they're taught one-man tactics to search around a building, because it's been shown if you get 1 police officer in there, 2 police officers, whatever, as quick as you can stop and contain that threat. Even if it becomes a barricade, or you're trying to look for that person, what have you done? You've protected all those other people behind you that can get out of there. Okay, so law enforcement has changed. We do one-man tactics. I think we're one of the few departments, I think it's in our policies that we do one-man tactics. And we teach our guys 1, 2, 3-man tactics, because they're not waiting. If they get to a door and they don't see anybody, law enforcement right there with them, you know, they have to go in, all right? Because that's what we have to do. We have to get in there and protect people. So hopefully the time frame is lower than what it used to be. So if you're in some of these companies in town, and one of our guys are working like a construction road job, and they hear this, they're going to be going. So you might see somebody coming in that's not even from a cruiser. He might have been working a construction job or in a training or whatever, okay? So we train that very much now. It's nationally, but it's obviously here that we got to get in there quick. And still, we want you to buy your time, but we do a lot of training with that now.
Yeah, luckily Burlington, we have a good number of officers working all around the town on any given day. And it seems every time we have a major incident, we always have 20 extra people on training of some sort. It just always works out that way. And so you'll see a lot of officers coming there very quickly, and we're going to act very aggressively to stop any threats. And Sergeant McNulty, he runs our training programs. Like I say, we are one of the best trained departments anywhere near here. We do a lot of training, a lot more than a lot of other people do, so. Everyone's good with this, right? Remember, locked door, make sure you can lock that door quickly.
Question,
Mhm.
because you say locked door. I know in a fire they say don't use an elevator, but in a situation like this, wouldn't it be best to get into the elevator and then pull the emergency? You got a phone in there already, a call 911,
Yep.
and you're secure in the confined spot that they can't get into.
I mean, yeah, that's one option. If you have nothing better, always go with whatever's best in that particular moment, right? You're only gonna have a second or two to make a decision on what am I gonna do. If you go into the elevator and you lock it, you pull that alarm thing, the alarm's gonna be going off, so somebody will know that you're in there. However, it is a pretty hard to get into kind of thing once you pull it. If you're between floors, it can be very difficult to get at you. So that might be an option. It's not ideal, but it would certainly work if you had nothing else available to you.
Depends how big your company is, because if you would
Yeah.
say that to like 300 people, you know, they're all
Yeah.
making a rush for the elevator. No, we're in here, you know, screw, you know what I mean?
And then you have the weight limits and everything else, and then.
But I assume that'd be a pretty safe place.
But you gotta try it too, because who knows, maybe it won't work. You gotta pull that thing and then the elevator keeps going. Or the fire department shows up, or maybe if somebody hits the button, you know, you have to actually, you know, I wouldn't say you have to do a full-on drill at your workplace, but maybe kind of like a walkthrough where you say, okay, what would you do? Oh, I would do this. Okay, let's try it. Run in there. Lock the door. Oh crap, I can't lock the door. You know, you have to kind of look at all these things and make sure they'll actually work, because we have a lot of theory, but to actually go around and practice it, even in low speed is good. We do little drills all the time with our people. We just say, hey, we're gonna act like we have an active shooter event somewhere. They don't drive there with their lights and sirens like they would in a real situation, but they show up, they get their equipment, they pull everything out, they check. We have keys to every school in town, and we also have the key to Leahy Clinic. So we can get into a lot of the square footage in Burlington. We have access to 24/7 for emergencies. But you have to kind of practice that and make sure, like, what would happen.
We've done drills at the mall where we've had somebody walk around with an actual blank gun and seeing what people did. That was pretty good. We did one at Leahy Clinic Wednesday night. We've been working on for quite some time. Leahy Clinic had about 60 people in their new ER, and they actually had role players and people and they're acting like they were victims and patients all the way around. So we had somebody walk in there with a blank gun and fire some rounds and see what they would do. And then we had officers respond to show them what it would look like. We sent one guy, then we sent two guys, then we sent four, and then we also started clearing the area to show them what it would look like if law enforcement was knocking on the door saying, open up, it's us, and we had a friendly face and a voice from Leahy with us, and we tried to pull them out. It was a pretty good drill, but I mean, they take it very serious up there, and like I said, they probably had 60 people there to work this drill, so that's obviously something you should at least think about, but it's good to find out what locks and what doesn't, or, you know, people think, they thought they'd have a lot more time and they didn't. It's interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and even just walking around going bang, bang. That would show people how fast it can happen. Barricading, if you don't have door locks, you have other options. Maybe you get into a room and some of these were simulated, and we actually have pictures of some real ones. This is Sergeant McDonough did this with, I have an extension cord right here.
People always ask, what do you do with a door that opens out?
Just with this.
We recommend extension cords compared to, say, bungees, but that door opens up out from that room. So I just took a table that was wider than the door frame. I grabbed an extension cord that was nearby, wrapped it around the table, and wrapped it around the handle. And trust me, I am not good at tying knots or anything, okay? If you can see, that's about as simple as you can get. And I had people stand outside, some big guys, and try to open that. They could not open that door. Because what happened? The table pulled against the door frame. So tell your people that if you're in a conference room or you're in a room that you want to make safe, if that's their office, you have a table right near the door. Okay, looks good, you put a bunch of stuff on it, okay, but now if something happens, you slide that table over, already wrap it around, you're good to go. We tell our school teachers, and that's what we tell them. I said, if you know, how about you have a cabinet right next to your door? You already have an extension cord already tied off. So if something happens, you close that door, you take it, you wrap it around the table, now you're good to go, because obviously all our doors at the schools lock. we have those adjoining doors that cause us problems. Those adjoining doors on those classrooms. So if we spend a lot of money doing the high school over to make nice door knocks, locks that they can do from the inside. But now the teachers say, okay, but now I got these two adjoining doors. What do I do there? What if there's nobody in that classroom? I'm worried about that. So we have to advise them what to do on those side doors. And those doors, some of those open out depending upon what room they're in. Okay, so we tell them, have that stuff already right there. The kids don't even know what it is. It's in a cabinet. Take out the extension cord, the table slides over, and now you're good. But what that does is that gives them peace of mind that they can keep their kids safe. And that's very, very important. They think about it. They know what they're going to do when it happens.
You can use a belt, if you have a handbag with a strap.
Right.
Extension cords are really good. They're very strong. Anything you can do on outward opening doors to tie it off will make it very difficult to get into the room. Now this happened out in California. This was, what was it, Southern California, I forget which college it was now, but it was in Southern California. They actually had a lockdown, so people realized all of a sudden, hey, our doors don't lock. And they said, go into a lockdown. So they improvised, and these are some of the things they came up with. They jammed furniture in here so that the door, would be difficult to get into. They had some heavy machinery. If you have file cabinets, think about your room. Look at your room. Maybe if you move your file cabinet next to the door that opens inward, and then in an emergency, you can just knock it over. Or maybe you have some of these things with the wheels. If you have those big file cabinets or pieces of furniture on wheels, you have to unlock the wheels, and you can push it over to the door and then lock them again. That's very difficult to get past something like that. Doors with closers on them, if you tie that closer off, then you can't open the door. That's pretty easy to do. You can see people actually doing it here. They figured this one out on their own. Everybody always asks, should I just pull the fire alarm? Right, should I? We can't really say. The fire alarms add to the confusion. If you need everyone to get out of the building, yeah, you want to pull the fire alarm, but at the same time, if you pull that fire alarm and everyone goes rushing out, maybe that's what the bad guy wants. Maybe they're outside there waiting for them. If you're going to leave during a fire alarm, you always want to make sure you take a look outside. Make sure you look around. Make sure there's nothing going on out there, any threats. Where you have your policies, procedures, when you practice at work, your fire drills. You don't want people kind of marching to the same spot every time. You might not want to have a big sign like reunification point outside in your parking lot. You don't want to tell people where you're going. You might want to think about, hey, do we want to be over here in vehicles where somebody may hide something? Or do we want to go someplace where, maybe we have a little bit more cover and away from vehicles? You can think about these things. Calling 911, very important. We ask, if anything ever happens, you call us right away. Some companies we've dealt with have these kind of crazy procedures where they tell them, no, call security first. Call security right away. And what we say is, if you have a real emergency, do not call security. Call us, okay? Unless you have armed security and they're very well trained, you want to call 911 for pretty much any emergency. If it's not an emergency, call anyone you want. We don't care. But when you have something actively going on right now, the faster you call 911, the better. And I can tell you, we've been on many calls, whatever it is. People will call their brother, their sister, their aunt, their uncle, and then they call us. Right? You have to get people in the habit of calling 911 right away. People say, oh my God, somebody just stole my car in my driveway. And they're talking to their friend, like, we'll call the police. You'd be shocked at how often this happens. I mean, this happens all the time. We've seen it with bank robberies. They call their corporate security office first, and then they call us. Tell your employees, tell everyone you know, if you have an emergency, life and death emergency, call 911. The faster you call us, the faster we get the information, the faster we get cars rolling that way. This is critical. People do this all the time with crimes. They call everybody but us. They go on Facebook and post, oh my God, I just got robbed. Seriously? I'm not joking. This happens. So make sure you have everyone in their head, get them thinking, call 911. We have a nightmare coming up with next generation 911. They're going to be able to text 911. That's going to be horrible. We're going to have people texting us all the time, like, hey, I need help. We're going to have no way of finding out where they are. So this is coming. But we want people to call 911 because we can get the information more quickly, we can ask the questions more quickly, and find out what's going on, and get that location, and get people heading that way.
Well, obviously, if it's 911 from a landline, it's gonna show us where it is. So we've been calling that and then just leaving the phone. At the very least, we're gonna get location. Right now, cell phones go to a central point here in the state. It doesn't go to the local cell tower. I think very soon they're working on the fact if you call 911 and you're in Burlington, it's gonna go to our cell tower and then to our PD. That's coming, but I would suggest that you let your employees know that if you work in Burlington or wherever you work, I'd probably put that town's PD number in my cell phone. Because if you call 911, they're gonna have to reroute that from somewhere else. Okay, and that's gonna take valuable time. You're better off looking down your phone, okay, I live in Nashua, but I work in Burlington. If anything happens in Burlington, I look at my phone, I find my Burlington PD, and I hit that immediately, okay? Now at least I know I'm talking to somebody in Burlington immediately where I can say, this is where I am, this is what's going on, okay? You should really have people do that they have that cell phone pre-programmed, you have a number in there right on top that gets you to that local PD. Very, very important.
And our number is 781-272-1212, and the faster you hit 0, the faster you get a dispatcher. We have the voice menu and stuff, but if you hit 0, you'll get dispatch right away. Massachusetts is one of the few states that has a silent call procedure for 911. So if you call 911, maybe and the threat is right there, you don't want to be too loud, or maybe you're locked in a room somewhere. This could be at your house, right? Imagine somebody broke into your house and you happen to be home. We'll go through this procedure. We'll say, hey, press 1 if you need the police. And we'll walk you through all these different steps of the call. And we'll use yes or no questions, 4 and 5. So 1 is police, 4 and 5, yes or no questions. That's what the dispatcher is going to ask. And the other thing people do when they call 911, they start screaming, get here faster, hurry, hurry, hurry. Yelling hurry doesn't get us there any faster. The cars are still going to be going there. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get information from you. And the more calm you can be on the phone, the better. You know, the yelling and screaming doesn't help, and it actually makes it a lot harder for us to hear what's going on. If for any reason, like the sergeant said, if you have a landline phone in Burlington, if you call 911 and just leave it off the hook and walk away from it, we can amplify the volume, we can hear everything going on in the room. So let's say somebody comes in, they're being a threat, you could leave the phone off the hook. And you can say, hey, you know, you don't have to get mad, you don't have to get violent. We're going to hear everything going on in the room, and we'll be dispatching units and listening. You know, people say, what should I do if this happens, if that happens? Even if you call 911 and hang up, we get that. We actually get an alert. The machine will actually make this loud tone, and we'll get your address. So as soon as you hit that last 1 on the 911, we're getting a call. We hope that you would stay on the line, and tell your employees too, if they accidentally call for whatever reason, stay on the line, talk to the dispatcher or officer on the phone, and let them know that everything is okay. And we'll probably send someone out. If it's a house, we're pretty much always going to send someone out to check to make sure everything's okay, because we've had these calls before where, no, everything's fine. It turns out to be a domestic or something. Same at your offices. Generally, the bigger the building you work in, the less likely we're going to send someone if it's an accidental call. But we try to make sure we come out to every single one of these if we can, if we have resources available, just to make sure everything's okay and just to educate people, hey, next time be careful about calling 911. Does anybody have 9 to dial an outside line on their phones?
We used to.
We just changed ours because of that.
Yeah, if you can change, get your IT people, just harass them for me, please. Change it to an 8, change it to anything but 9, because what we have is international calling codes. We'll often get the 9, and then they're trying to call, I think India is 11 something, and we get a lot of those calls. Sometimes we get them for China. The country codes are very similar. So you want to make sure you don't have 9 for an outside line. You also don't want anything, your office phones, when you call 911, you want them to go to us. So you don't want 911 going to the security office or anything like that. So make sure, and if you ever want to test your 911, you can. Give us a call on the business line first. Ask if we're busy. A lot of times we are, but if we're not, we'll say, yeah, sure, you can run a test right now. And then you call in on 911, and we'll make sure the address comes up properly and the callback number comes up properly.
Could you repeat the cell phone number, the,
781-272-1212. That's our regular business line.
thank you.
So very quickly, bombs. I gave you the bomb threat procedure. Now, we haven't seen too many bombs around here, but we actually have had them. I had no idea how dangerous bombs were until I went out to a training in New Mexico and I actually saw what bombs do. It's very eye-opening. Think about a pipe. If you see a suspicious device, or if you get a threat and someone says, hey, you know, I left a bomb there, this actually shows you the distances, and you can get this online. This is the distances that you should be away from that object. So a pipe, a 5-pound pipe bomb, you want to be inside the building 70 feet away. So if it's in the corner over here, we want to be on the other side of the building. If we're outside, we want to be, look at that, 1,200 feet away.
Is that because of the walls?
So the walls will absorb some of the materials. Our handguns, the bullets come out of our handguns at generally anywhere between 800, 1,200 feet per second. When you get up to rifles, now you're talking about 2,000 feet per second. Low explosives are going about 20,000 feet per second. High explosives, 30,000 feet per second. So we saw the marathon bombing, all the damage that was done, because even those small particles are going at an extremely high velocity. So you want to be very far away. Anytime you think you have a suspicious package or something, you get something delivered to your office, it's a big box, you know, boom, ha ha ha, anything like that written on it, chemicals leaking from it, you want to get very far away from it. The State Police Bomb Squad is great. We call them. They have no problem. They come out every single time we've ever called them without even complaining. They come out, they'll x-ray it, they'll check it, they'll do whatever they have to do to make sure it's not a threat. So we have had explosives in Burlington before. So I know now I want to be a lot further away than I've been in past calls. And if you look at this semi-trailer, if we ever got one of these, you want to be in like Woburn, Billerica. You want to be far away, 9,300 feet. I mean, Burlington's only 11.8 square miles. So you want to be almost more than a mile and a half away. Never give up. This is very important. A lot of people don't know what to do in an emergency. Most important thing I can tell you, and you can tell everyone you know, is in an emergency you have to focus on your breathing. Slow your breathing down. Concentrate on breathing. And you can do this like for heartburn, meditation, whatever. But in an emergency, think about it. You get in a bad car accident and you're injured. Now you're sitting in your car waiting to get someone to help you get out. You might be there for a while. Most important thing you do, breathe in through your nose. Count to 2. Breathe out. If you keep doing that, if you're shot, if you're stabbed, if you're run over by a car, if you fall off your roof while you're hanging your Christmas lights, I don't care what it is, this will help you survive. If you run into somebody who's suffered one of those situations, you tell them, listen, I need you to just breathe for me. Slow your breathing down. If you slow your breathing down, you slow your bleeding down. You slow down your thinking enough so that you can start thinking again and concentrating. Bleeding. We used to tell people back in the day, don't use tourniquets, but we found these wars we've had for the past several years that tourniquets save lives. So if somebody's bleeding and you can't control it with direct pressure, don't be afraid to tie off a tourniquet, right? If anyone's bleeding, pack it up, put direct pressure on it. That will stop it. If that doesn't work, tie a belt, tie something around the extremity. You want to be above the bleed, tie that off, and that will save them. That's Stop the Bleed. That's a Homeland Security program. They're encouraging people. When someone's bleeding, don't just stand there and go, oh boy, this looks pretty bad. You know, grab shirts, towels, whatever you have. Pack that up with direct pressure. And if you have to use a tourniquet, use that. Is anyone here certified in CPR? Okay, good. That's a lot of people. But let's say you don't know CPR, you're not certified. I'm going to show you something right now. The government now is pushing this hands-only CPR. And does anybody know, anyone from the disco era? Remember Staying Alive? Right?
Yeah.
Staying Alive. That right there, that's the beat you want to do this to. If somebody is lying on the floor and they're basically dead, they have no pulse and they're not breathing, take the palm heel of your hand, put it in the center of their chest, lean over on them, and just do compressions about 1.5 to 2 inches deep for an adult, and to the beat of Staying Alive. So think, da, da, da. There, I just taught you all CPR. How about that? That's hands-only CPR. You don't have to do the breaths and everything. If you just do compressions, somebody who's in that situation, you've raised their chance of survival immensely. Hands-only CPR. If you just do compressions only, they're going to have a much better chance of surviving, okay? And don't be afraid. You're not going to do any more damage to them, right? They have no pulse. Guess what? They're dead. So if you do hands-only CPR, if you don't know CPR, if you do that, you can save them. We will show up. We have defibrillators, and then the paramedics will show up. They have even more stuff. And we've had people that we've saved here in Burlington. Never give up. Serious injury. If you're still conscious and alert, we have the best hospitals in the world all around us. If you go into Boston, you can't throw a rock without hitting a hospital, right? We have some of the best hospitals in the world. Look at the number of people that were injured in the marathon bombing. The 3 people who didn't survive, unfortunately, they probably had no chance of survival, but all the other survivors that were there, hundreds and hundreds of people survived because we have the best hospitals on earth. If you're conscious and alert after a bad car crash, bad fall, no matter what it is, I don't want you to think, oh my God, I'm going to die. You should be thinking, oh, I'm going to live, probably, right? You have a very, very, very high chance of survival. If you're unconscious, you're not going to know. But if you're still conscious and alert, your chances of surviving in this area, if we get you to one of these hospitals in less than an hour, your chance of survival is very high here, okay? So I always want you to remember that. You know, you're probably going to survive. And then finally, we'd like to end up with, I love you guys. This was the program we went to in Colorado, and I'll give you these on the way out. If you go to iloveyouguys.org, all of this material is free. Doesn't cost you a thing. You can download all the manuals, all the protocols. There's a business one, there are schools. Everything is there. It's on that link of the paper I gave you, all the resources. This is the best system that there is. It's 4 simple actions. It covers anything from fires, floods, tornadoes, active shooter. It doesn't matter. This covers it. And it's simple. It's plain language. This is what we want everyone in Burlington using. This is what we use. This is what the schools use. We'd like everyone to adopt it.
You guys know Vanna White's still working? Have you guys seen that? I just happened to see her. I didn't know she was still doing it. But that's what I'm doing right now. I'm showing you that.
Yeah.
But the reason we went to this is because, like Alice and some of those other programs, they're only for lethal threats, active shooters, things like that. This covers everything. What we wanted in our schools was this flyer in every single classroom, every single office, so you can see exactly what to do. So if it's a lockdown and it's a part-time teacher and they go, okay, lockdown, what is that? Okay, the front door is locked, keep kids in the classroom, you know, keep it as usual. It doesn't say lockdown where it says now go in a corner, shut the lights off, so automatically everybody's on the same page. This is geared to the workplace as well, so if you think about it, I'd have these in all your offices, all in some nice places all around, so people always look at it, nice and colorful. It covers fire, it covers hazmat, anything like that. Shelter in place is obviously a weather condition. Anything you have, this is covered. We like it because it's an all-hazard program. That's why we switched over to the schools.
And we've had tornadoes here. We've had earthquakes here, right? This covers everything. And the important thing is a lockout. Say a bank gets robbed in your neighborhood or near your business. You don't have to go into a full lockdown, but a lockout means you just lock the exterior doors and nobody goes in or out. It's a safety measure, right? And this applies to everybody. So finally, Rick Rescorla, this guy right here, he saved over 2,500 people at Morgan Stanley on 9/11. Unfortunately, he died in 9/11, but Rick, what happened was the first time they bombed the building with the truck bomb in the basement, the garage, Rick told Morgan Stanley, we have to get out of here, we have to leave. He talked to all of his expert friends, and they said, they're going to come back. And Morgan Stanley said, no, we're not going to leave. Rick said, no, we really have to leave. Believe me, they're coming back. No, we're not doing that. Okay, if you're going to stay, then everybody has to have a safety plan. Everybody has to practice drills. Rick made everybody in that business walk down all those flights of stairs every few months. They would run a drill, evacuation drill. So guess what everyone learned? The women with the nice shoes in New York, they learned, I have to bring sneakers to work and keep them by my desk. Because they practiced this and they found going down 100 flights of stairs wasn't so fun. Then they learned all these little problems that they would have. Well, during 9/11, they did exactly as they were trained. They all went down the flights of stairs. They all survived. A bunch of other companies didn't because they had no plan, they didn't think about this stuff, they didn't do anything. Rick Rescorla, he's a hero. He's 2,500 people that he saved because he thought of this, didn't spend a lot of time on it, but he practiced it, and it worked. So that's what we ask. Think a little bit like Rick, be like Rick, and just think about this stuff at work. So we'll have to end here.